Hello and welcome to another live stream. This one's a little bit different. This is my last night in Cape Town, and I've been running around packing, saying goodbye, getting things ready to go. So I don't have time to do a full live stream, but of course, I wanted to say hi, have a little chat with you guys before I get back to packing up. Whew, it's a lot always packing. I'm nervous. I lost my status. So for the last 15 years, I've had quite high status on the airlines with Star Alliance. And last year, I didn't travel enough to keep it. And so now I'm traveling with my board bags and all the bags for the family. And I'm a little bit nervous. So I'll let you guys know how that goes uh, after my flight tomorrow. But otherwise, it's been a great trip to Cape Town. We had a lot of different conditions, a variety of conditions, port tack, starboard tack, onshore, offshore, kind of everything you can ask for, jumping, wave riding. And we had a master class here. There was a master class last week. I talked about it a little bit last Sunday. It was also great. I was nervous going into it because I have not done coaching here before, but it's a place I've spent a lot of time, and it went great. We had a really good group, really keen group. Greg was there. Greg's in the chat. Hey, Greg. And yeah, everyone gave it their best, and it was a lot of fun for me. And then, since then, I haven't been on the water that much. I've had some family commitments. So one of the things that I say in all of this coaching is that it's better to have that high focus period where you're really focused on your windsurfing than to have windsurfing always be a maybe and then not have it so focused. So, one of the things I recommend if you have a family or a significant other, you can say, look, for the next 6 weeks or 2 weeks or whatever the time period is, I'm going to put windsurfing above everything else. But then the period after that, the 6 weeks, the 2 weeks, uh, windsurfing is going to come last, and I'll still get on the water if it works, but otherwise, we're going to be doing things together or with the kids or whatever it is, and making those deals, I think, really helps for getting on the water and getting focused time on the water. So I had a similar situation with my wife where I front loaded a lot of my water time to the beginning part of the trip, and then the climax of that was in the master class where I was gone for the whole week, and then this week, this last week now, I had some other commitments, and yeah, then the conditions just didn't line up with when I had time, so I didn't really get on the water. But like I said, it was part of the agreement, which then allowed me to have that full focus before. Let me say some hellos. I already said hi to Greg. We got Axel from Tarifa, Jorg. Hey, Jorg. Mark. Mark, how you doing? Mark was on a master class in Denmark. Alex, Matt was also in Cape Town. Ragnar. Ragnar is still doing his ice sailing. I love it. I love it. I love it. Steen, Suna had a great session. 4276. Nice. Axel sailed every day this week. You guys are killing it. You guys are getting the water time that I'm not getting. So that's good. There's balance. There's balance in the world. Um, Greg is saying he had his first session back in England after Cape Town, and it didn't quite feel like South Africa. But I guess the important question is, did you feel any of the lessons learned transferring to your home spot? It can take a while, but I'm curious what it felt like. Because, like I said, I don't have so much time to do a full live stream. I'm not going to pull up the Facebook group, but I've got some minutes to talk with you guys. I would feel bad uh, not spending some time with you this Sunday, like every Sunday. So I've got the chat right here, so I can see see the chat. So that will be what I'm responding to rather than the Facebook group. Ragnar saying that Cape Town looked great, but wasn't possible due to work. Yeah, I'm going to do some master classes in Europe over the summer. I will release the plan soon. So I'm not planning to be back to Europe before June 1st. So it'll be everything will be after June 1st, probably. I don't expect those plans to change. But yes, I will announce that very soon. Whoa, Santa Cruz was very stormy, 50 plus knots. Did you get out? Were you sailing in that? 3-3 conditions. Where do you go when it's that windy? You're still going to Waddell or Davenport? Or are there other spots that work? Or is it just too stormy? Nice. Matt made some progress on his tax. Christoph is saying that nobody was windsurfing in the wind because it's just too dangerous. I get that. I get that. Especially if you're not used to it, or if the place is not used to it, because the ocean can change when you get that crazy amount of wind. And places like Pozo, where they're used to getting 50 knots, they kind of know what's going on, and it's pretty stable conditions. Whereas in places that normally get 20 to 30 knots, and then suddenly they get 50, things might be acting a bit different. Axel says they're blessed with wind. Just came back from a session on the Baltic Sea. Tested a new board, new fin setup. Cool. I love it. I really recommend playing around, experimenting. So Alex is asking about the accommodation during my coaching weeks. So it depends. Really depends. And the other people on the group can probably talk about it best. But so for Cape Town, for example, if you're talking about accommodation, which I assume you are, but maybe you mean something else by accommodation. But if you're talking about house, everyone arranged their own accommodation. So some of the people were staying in Tableview, some of them were staying in Nordhook. I stayed in Scarborough, way in the south. In Denmark, we do it a little bit differently. Klitmøller lends itself to staying together. So often I'll rent a big house, and it's an option. So people can opt into joining the house or not. And so some of the people in the group who have been to the Denmark master classes, some of them have opted to join the house and some of them not. So it really depends, and it goes place by place. But really the focus of the masterclass is on the coaching. So we have the dry land coaching, the theory, and the water part. And then the group dynamic is also really important, the networking that happens and the peer pressure. And it's something that you can take advantage of without going on a masterclass as well. Just sailing with people, sailing with friends, involving other people in your windsurfing is one of the best ways to, one, have more fun, and two, to get better. So that peer pressure, that peer support, just that community, having that community is really important. I think it helps a lot. It's also how I learned. It's how I think a lot of us learn, but then we kind of move away from it. I remember when I was coming up and learning, I was sailing a lot with Alex Mussolini and Levi and a whole bunch of different people. And we were always going out and pushing each other and working on similar things or different things, but being on the water together. And that was always really important. So in terms of eating, so I see Alex, you're asking about eating. So sometimes we'll eat together, sometimes not. Sometimes, I like to do at least one team dinner towards the end where we talk about what we learned. And yeah, sometimes we'll do multiple team dinners over the week. Again, Denmark lends itself more to that than other places because it's such a small place. So the group spends a lot more time together in Denmark than in other places because Klitmøller is a small place. It just makes sense visiting some of the cool restaurants there. Yeah, staying together. And that's a cool part of the experience. I would like to do some more experience-based master classes as well. Like, for example, going to Madagascar, or there's a secret spot in Peru that someone was showing me the other day, which looks really cool, and that would be a different kind of experience, so less so heavily focused on getting better, and more focused on having a challenging experience, a new experience, and doing that with a group and with guidance. Thomas is saying to come to Lista. Yes, I want to come to Lista. Like, that's on my list for years. At some point, it's going to happen. Then you can modify my harness, convert me, sew some straps. I'm into it. I'll bring an extra harness. I'm into it. Lista is on the list. Yeah, are there any other questions about anything? I can answer really anything. Yeah, so I fly back to Europe tomorrow, and then Hawaii, Maui, a few days, 6 days later. I think we get back to Maui on the 14th or something. And then we'll be on Maui until the end of May. So I'm going to be doing some video content there, getting some other coaching products ready. So Alex, did I answer your question? Was that enough? There's a lot of people in the chat who have done master classes with me before, and they might be better at explaining what it's like. My focus on providing the tuition and making sure that the guidance is there is different than realizing really what the experience is like. Greg has been on a course, Axel has been on a course, York has been on a course, Mark has been on a course, Matt has been on a course, Ragnar has been on a course. I don't know if I've missed anyone in the chat, but yeah, we've got a lot of people here who have done the master classes. Alex is asking if there are any spots where you don't need to bring gear. So we did it in Tenerife a few years ago, and it was successful, and there are options for renting gear. Ragnar, for example, rented gear. A few other regulars from the Sunday live stream were there and renting gear. But renting gear actually proved to be more challenging than they initially thought, because there's somewhat of a limited selection. You have to sail upwind from where you rent the gear to the harbor wall or to Cabezo. And yeah, it wasn't that easy. And I think most of the people that rented said that they would rather bring their own gear than rent again. So even though it is possible to rent there, I'm not sure that it's really the answer. Why don't you want to bring your own gear? Is there a reason for that? Is there something because you don't want to travel with it, or is there another issue attached? Do you want to try new gear? I think Tenerife is pretty good for trying new gear. We've got someone on Facebook, I think this is Caro, saying that you can rent Bruce and Sail Loft with Danny Bruce in Tenerife Upwind. Axel says he recommends staying in the house in Denmark. Alex says, yeah, he wants to avoid the hustle and hassle. I think so. Ragnar rented gear, and like he's saying, next time he would bring his own gear. I think that it's difficult. Maybe there's another spot with rental closer to the beach. Maui is a place where you wouldn't have to bring gear. But otherwise, I'm not sure. I want to throw this back to the chat. What do you guys think? Would you rather go on a trip with your own gear, or would you rather rent? And what kind of experiences have you had? So Steve says he would rather break rental gear than his own $1 million gear. New board is 3,000 euros. Yeah, that's good, especially if you get the insurance. I would always rather have my own gear. So when I'm traveling, I take my gear. That's actually not true. Not always. But often I'll travel with my board because a board has its own setup, and even if I'm on production boards. So like when I was competing in Japan, I took my boom and my board, and then I borrowed sails, masts, and extensions because the Ezzy sails, they're kind of always the same. But like with the board and the boom, those are what you customize and you make really your own. And so I didn't have any problems with that. So when I was competing in Japan, I did this a lot. Before this event in Japan was a PWA event. It was what they called the World Performance Event in Japan. And I used to always go. I actually won it. I won it in maybe it was 2014. I have to look it up. But I can't remember who was in the final. I think it was Victor Fernandez, Camille Juban, me. I can't remember who else. But I won it then. And then I think it was in 2016. I came second. And I was in the final against Mussolini. We did a 2-man final. The other one was a 4-man final. Anyway, the point I'm trying to make is I did well on those events, and I was borrowing sails. So I would just go with my board and my boom, because those are what, again, you customize what your contact points, right? Your contact points. And so if you use even everything else the same, but a different boom, your sail is going to feel really weird. And obviously, if you use a different board, it's going to sail really weird. So if you have the same sails as what you're used to with the right masts and extension and all that stuff, I think those are pretty easy to rent. But then if you have your own boom and your own board, it can feel really similar to what you're used to, is what I'm trying to say. All right, so let's go through. We've got some more comments. So Alex is saying that in Brazil and Mauritius, you can rent. Matt is saying he'd rather have his own gear and it's not too hard to travel with. Greg says that it's nice to have his own gear, but traveling is difficult and worry about it breaking during the travel. Definitely possible, but I travel a lot with gear, and there's not that many issues that happen during the travel. What is worse is when you're on a trip somewhere and something happens and you can't get a replacement. I always travel with 2 booms for that reason, because if something else breaks, you can kind of figure out some solution. And right, like if you break a mast, you could put the wrong mast in your sail with more extension or less extension or whatever. Or if your sail breaks, you could use the wrong size. If your board breaks, you can repair it with solar res, at least good enough for the trip. But if your boom breaks, there's not a lot you can do. So that's why I always travel with 2 booms. The one time I didn't travel with 2 booms, it was 2 years ago, end of 2022. So I guess less than 2 years ago. And I was in Portugal for a week. First session, great session. End of the session, break my boom. that was it. I was able to borrow a boom, so I got on the water, but yeah, that was annoying. Yeah, Steve is saying I should do a video on how to pack for travel. I definitely will. Matt was telling me that Ben Profit made a good one recently, and it was about 1 board, 3 sails, which is standard. I'm often traveling with more than that. I like maybe, I had 7 sails now in Cape Town, but I like, depends on the trip, but between 4 and 5 sails generally. Cape Town, you get a huge wind range. There's not a lot of places where you maybe get a 3-7 day, and then the next day is a 5-5 day. You know, a lot of places are more, there's a narrow band. For example, Maui, you could go to Maui with just a 4-7. If you're heavier, maybe just a 5-0. And sometimes you'll be underpowered, sometimes overpowered, but never by too much. Like I have, like in my truck on Maui, basically I have a 4-7, a 5-0, and a 5-5. That covers me for 90% of conditions. And then there's some days where it's really windy and like, oh, I need my 4-5. And then maybe I go home and get it or something. But that's rare. And so Maui has a very narrow wind band. Somewhere like Pozo and Gran Canaria, a little bit more width in the wind band, but it's still not so crazy. You know you're going to need the small sails, and the big sails you're probably not going to need. Whereas Cape Town, it can be 3-7, 5-5, and so I brought them all. Dan is saying renting kit on a clinic has been okay for him as long as he's stuck to brands that he's familiar with. He tried a new brand once and it made the clinic very tough as he couldn't click with the new kit. Yeah, this is really important because when you're on a clinic or a master class, there's so much new happening. The week is full of new. Coaching is probably a new experience. Seeing yourself, analyzing your sailing, all of this is new. It's a week of new. And to add new gear into the mix is just complicating things. So I think that if you are going to rent, you want to make sure that you're on brands you are familiar with. I think that's a good point. Christoph said that he's rented in San Carlos. It's worked well. Yeah, I think kind of covered the main pros and cons. Maui is somewhere you can go and you can either buy gear that's good at a reasonable price or rent or demo. There's a lot of good gear around on Maui. And often, maybe the boards you have for Europe don't work as well on Maui. So if you're coming to Maui from Europe, I think figuring out a board on island is probably a better solution. All right, guys, we are coming to the end. I am going to sign off. But as always, I really enjoyed spending this time with you on Sunday. I'm going to get to the comments and posts and videos in the Facebook group next week, Sunday. If I'm not flying then, I haven't checked actually on my ticket, on my flights. But I don't think I am, but I might be. So if I'm flying, we're not going to get to it. It'll be the following Sunday. But whenever we're doing the next live stream, I'm going to get to all the posts in the Facebook group. So if you have posted, I will get to it. If you haven't posted, this is your opportunity to post. The Facebook group is there. I'm sure most of you are already in it, but if you're not, feel free to join. It's an amazing community of windsurfers who are very helpful and supportive. If you have any question, comment, concern, photo, video, something you want to post to get feedback on, or maybe just support, maybe you have a question about traveling or a question about technique, a question about motivation, a question about anything that's windsurfing related, post it in the group. Or maybe you just want to share a success. Maybe you landed your first forward loop or figured out how to do an aerial on the wave. We love to celebrate those successes. So post it in the community. I read everything that's posted and I try to get to it on the Sunday live streams. I will see you next week, Sunday. If I'm not flying, I've got to check my flight schedule because I am going back to Maui sometime around then. But I will see you some Sunday soon, whether it's the next one or the following one. And I hope you have a windy week and get on the water. I'm looking forward to seeing your posts in the Facebook group. Bye-bye.